The National Security Advisor, Mike Walz, is out. He is gone. Now, the National Security Advisor is a non-Senate confirmed position. The National Security Advisor exists as the top national security point of contact between the president and what is called the NSC, the National Security Council. The National Security Council partially is housed actually in the White House, but mostly is actually in the Eisenhower Executive Office building, which is technically on White House grounds. It's that ugly, monolithic, big building right next to the White House. Michael Walz, being the National Security Advisor, he did last longer than Michael Flynn, but of course Michael Flynn was taken out by our own government. Now, there's always been, let's just say, upheaval when it comes to the national security position when it comes to President Trump. Famously, he had H.R. McMaster or John Bolton. President Trump likes to put people in that role that are sometimes more hawkish, more aggressive than he is, as a way of kind of a negotiating tactic, is that when you walk into a room with John Bolton with Iran, they think, my goodness, that guy's a lunatic, he might bomb us. Then President Trump can kind of use that as let's just say, a leveraging tactic, as a negotiating tool. Now, understand, the National Security Advisor is one of the first faces the president sees every single morning when it comes from a work context. Every morning, the president receives his daily briefing. The person who administers that daily briefing is the National Security Advisor. So all night into the early hours of the morning, the National Security Council is compiling, let's just say, 5 to 6 bullet points what the president needs to know. Here's what's happening in Iran. Here's what's happening with Russia. Here's the threats from China. Here's what's happening cyber. The National Security Advisor puts all of that together, goes straight up to the president after he consolidates what is the hub in the National Security Council and presents it to the president. Mr. President, here's what's going on. Here is your daily confidential, classified, I should say, presidential briefing. That person needs to get along very well with the president. That person needs to have a good vibe and a good energy with the president because they spend a lot of time together. Now, Mike Walz, of course, famously added Jeffrey Goldberg, to the Signal chat. The Signal chat, of course, is one thing that was probably one of the more annoying developments of this administration so far. Mike Walz added the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, and we never got a really good answer of how that happened. One of the excuses was, well, he saved his contacts with Jeffrey Goldberg, and then he wasn't sure who he was adding and why he was there and what was going on. And it's just, we're not exactly completely clear or, let's just say, certain why that happened. Now, Mike Walz, after the attacks that happened in Yemen, the Houthi attacks, he famously sent the knuckle and emoji with the American flag and the fire symbol. Now, Mike Walz and I had a fine relationship. He knew that we had significant disagreements, and that's what I really want to emphasize and mention here, is that Mike Walz and his deputy, Alex Wong, represented a neoconservative view of foreign policy. Now, what is a neoconservative view of foreign policy? Well, neoconservatism is actually a outgrowth of Marxism from the 1940s and 50s, which it is a Trotskyite, Stalinist way of viewing the world, which is that we are going to expand the state to such great lengths, and we're going to bring American values by force to the rest of the world. The architects of the Iraq War, the architects of the Vietnam War, and mind you, yesterday was the 50-year anniversary of the fall of Saigon. Neoconservatives brought us into Vietnam, and so it is actually very fitting that a neoconservative falls the day after Saigon fell 50 years ago. Something to think about. And so there's a major internal battle happening, and it is manifested with this Mike Walz, Alex Wong situation. Overall, this is a positive development for President Trump's administration. Mike Walz knows that I don't see eye to eye with him on many things. I've said that to him in his face. It's nothing personal. I just don't think we should go to war with Iran. And that is actually what I want your emails today. I'm going to read them all. I might not respond to them all, but I'm going to read them all. You are representative of the conservative base. You are in the front lines of the MAGA movement. Do you support military strikes against Iran if they are developing a nuclear bomb? It's a very important question because, look, war with Iran, of course, is what Tom Cotton and Lindsey Graham want. They've wanted that forever. But what is instead being proposed is, well, what if we just do limited airstrikes? And you got to also just take the step back. Wait a second. Why are we trusting our intel agencies so quickly? We've only been in charge for 101 or 102 days. We're all of a sudden going to trust the Biden holdover intel agencies that are telling us Iran is close to a nuclear weapon after they have lied to us at every single corner and every turn? The battle is over Iran, and there are people in Washington inside the Pentagon and inside the administration who want to launch military strikes on Iran. Often they say it'd be easy, just one strike, in and out. Now, pause. How often have they actually been correct about the one in and out thing? Has that ever actually been the case? Oh, yeah, we're just going to do some strikes in Libya. Oh, really? Libya has been a catastrophe. Libya has been a disaster. ever since we removed Gaddafi. By the way, Gaddafi is a really interesting example as to why Iran wants nuclear weapons. Remember, Gaddafi voluntarily denuclearized. Remember that? Gaddafi voluntarily denuclearized, and then he got sodomized in the streets of Libya. And we still have troops in Libya. And here's the honest truth. America cannot and absolutely does not and cannot afford a war with Iran. Military strikes against Iran would be war against Iran, period. And I want someone to make the argument why that is a good idea. I've heard all the arguments, and Mike Walz represented a coalition of people in Washington, D.C. that were largely sympathetic to that. Oh, it's just a couple military strikes. Again, when have any of these people ever proven that it's just a couple military strikes? It's always a further quagmire that gets us involved in these unnecessarily conflicts. And then finally, let's just take a step back. Iran, of course, the Ayatollahs of Iran are terrible. Nobody likes them. You must remember, they're only in power because of America, because of us. We put them in power. We displaced the Shah. We displaced the democratically elected leader, Mossadegh, and put in the Shah, which then, of course, led to the Ayatollahs of Iran. And then finally, is a nuclear weapon against Iran a threat to America? Probably could be. It's a threat to Israel, but is it a threat to America? I mean, India has nuclear weapons. Pakistan has nuclear weapons. So is it worth a potential another war with Iran? And the people that are, let's just say, advocates for preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon by all means necessary, they're the same architects that were perfectly fine with the Iraq War, the same designers of the Iraq War. The primary way Iran can hurt this country is by sucking us into another Middle East quagmire, and they know it. And Iran would have the potential to be the worst Middle East quagmire of all time. Iran has 90 million people. That's more than 3 times as big as Iraq was when we invaded 22 years ago. It's larger than both Afghanistan and Iraq combined, both in population and in area. Iraq was at least mostly a flat country. It's a bunch of cities along a couple rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. Iran isn't like that. It's almost all mountains. Iran has spent decades preparing specifically for war with the United States. Their military has lots of weapons designed for fighting a much stronger adversary. They have a lot of drones, a lot of speedboats, a lot of cheap, expendable weapons. They're far more formidable than Iraq or the Taliban were. And I seriously want your thoughts. Email me, freedom@charliekirk.com. Would you say it's a good idea to use military force to strike potential Iranian nuclear targets? My whole life, I've been told that Iran is getting a bomb. Iran is getting a bomb. Iran is getting a bomb. Iran is getting a nuclear bomb. And yet here in 2025, they do not have a nuclear bomb. So why should we trust the American intelligence without verifying it? Now, the other side of the argument is, Iran is this big threat. The same people that told us that Iraq was a big threat, the same people that told us the Taliban was a big threat. I'll be honest, fine. I mean, I don't like Iran, but the evidence shows that every single one of these people, the last couple of decades, that is pushing for a conflict with Iran has not just failed miserably, has been one of the greatest catastrophes in American foreign policy ever. Thousands of lives needlessly lost of Americans, millions of people displaced, trillions of dollars spent. And let's be honest, at this particular moment, we cannot afford this war. We are economically vulnerable. There is massive de-dollarization happening. We're trying a difficult manufacturing pivot with tariffs. We've seen the rise of the Chinese Communist Party. We blew our military reserves in Ukraine. And now is the time that all of a sudden we want to try to get involved in another endless conflict. Let me be clear. It will not end with just military strikes. If you strike Iran on the interior, you will have a war. That is an act of war. And if that's what you want, that's fine. Make your case.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.